Lord Jesus, your team and their fans.
Jesus.
They be getting up in everybody's business.
There is a moment that changes everything. Not a game-winning shot, not a record-breaking performance, not a contract signing or a trade deadline move. A moment where someone sits in front of a camera, puts on a professional smile, and lets something slip that reveals exactly how they feel about something they were never supposed to admit bothered them. Lord Jesus, your team and their fans, Jesus, they be getting up in everybody's business. 7 words delivered with a smug grin by someone who presents herself as a media professional. 7 words aimed directly at the Indiana Fever, their players, and the millions of fans who have made this franchise the most talked-about team in women's basketball history. And the moment those words left her mouth, something shifted, because Kelsey Mitchell heard them. Kelsey Mitchell, 7-year Indiana Fever veteran, franchise scoring leader, the woman who stayed when this team
felt like Kels probably should have got a little love. I honestly thought she probably should have been player of the month. Just what she was doing, and at the clip she was doing it, I think she was like 50, 40, 90 this month, which is really, really hard to do. So I feel very fortunate to play with her. And
was losing 25 games a season, and nobody was watching, decided she was done letting it slide. And what happened next became one of the most misrepresented stories in women's basketball this year. The internet grabbed the moment and twisted it into something unrecognizable. Social media decided it was a story about jealousy inside the Fever locker room. About cracks in the relationship between Mitchell and Caitlin Clark. About tension, division, and resentment bubbling beneath the surface of Indiana's most important season in franchise history. Almost none of that is supported by what either player has actually said publicly. The real story, the one that deserves to be told with accuracy and without agenda, is almost the complete opposite of what social media is currently selling. And Kelsey Mitchell's own words are the receipts. Let us start at the beginning, because the online narrative has drifted so far from reality that most people currently arguing about this story are debating something that does not exist. Chiney Ogwumike, former WNBA player turned media personality, delivered what she framed as a casual observation about the Indiana Fever and their fan base. The framing was pointed and deliberate. Not just a comment about fans being passionate, not just a light jab at an enthusiastic audience. She said your team and their fans, implicating the players, the organization, and the entire Fever community in whatever behavior she found so exhausting. The phrase Lord Jesus, positioned as a preamble to they be getting up in everybody's business, was condescension dressed up as commentary. It was the kind of dismissive framing that treats genuine passion and investment as something embarrassing and inappropriate rather than what it actually is. Evidence that something...
So I think for me lately was the shift in moments in Indiana, period, as far as like the arena, where we started, and B was my vet, kinda, right? Kinda.
We up there, sis. We up there.
She was a Fever girl first, and so she also saw, and you know, she's a vet too. They've seen what Indiana was, and I think now where it's at now, the big moment is seeing the shift and being a part of it from a standpoint that I know where Indiana was, and so to see the cultivation of it, you just grow to appreciate the process and, you know, the growth in which the game
real and powerful is happening inside that organization. Kelsey Mitchell did not respond with an emotional breakdown. She did not go on social media and air grievances. She did not gather reporters and deliver a tearful confession about locker room dysfunction. She did the thing that required the most composure and the most courage. She responded calmly, factually, and directly. She credited Caitlin Clark on camera without hedging, without diplomatic both sides language, without the carefully constructed media training answer designed to acknowledge Clark's impact while subtly diminishing it. I've seen both sides of it, from being on a team with Caitlin and knowing some of the stuff and the wave that she created as far as where the game is and what she's been a part of as far as this process. She said Clark created the wave, directly, clearly, in front of someone who was clearly hoping for something more ambiguous, and then she talked about what it means to have been part of Indiana before the wave arrived. "We up there," said with genuine excitement. The excitement of someone who invested 7 years of professional labor into a franchise that was losing games in near empty arenas, who stayed when leaving would have been easier, and who is now watching everything she believed in come to life in the most spectacular way possible. That is not jealousy. That is not resentment. That is not tension. That is a player defending her team, defending her teammate, and refusing to participate in a narrative designed to divide something she helped build. And yet the internet heard Mitchell break silence on locker room tension and concluded she was airing grievances. The social media ecosystem did not misread the story accidentally. It misread it because the accurate version generates fewer clicks. Loyalty is boring. Defense of a teammate does not trend. Jealousy does. Before addressing the roster problems that are genuinely threatening the Fever's ceiling, it is worth establishing exactly what the Clark-Mitchell relationship actually looks like based on documented public evidence, because the jealousy narrative only survives if you ignore that evidence entirely. Caitlin Clark, publicly on camera, said Kelsey Mitchell should have one Player of the Month over herself. I felt like Kels probably should have gotten a little love. I honestly thought she probably should have been Player of the Month, just what she was doing and at the clip she was doing it. I think she was like 50-40-90 this month, which is really, really hard to do. I feel very fortunate to play with her. That is Clark advocating for Mitchell over herself, volunteering that assessment unprompted, using her platform, the most scrutinized platform in women's basketball right now, to redirect attention toward a teammate she believes deserved recognition. Mitchell's response to Clark's presence in Indiana has been equally direct. She talked about watching the shift in Indianapolis, about seeing the arena transform, about knowing where Indiana was before and understanding the magnitude of where Indiana is now. She talked about being a Fever girl again, about choosing Indiana over potentially more lucrative situations because Indiana is where she feels genuinely valued. Go where you're loved and not tolerated because all money is not good money. She said that, she meant it, and she said it while describing her decision to stay in Indiana, the place where Caitlin Clark arrived and made everything Mitchell worked for matter on a scale none of them anticipated. That is the actual relationship. Two players who respect each other, advocate for each other publicly, and have chosen to build something together rather than compete for the same spotlight. The jealousy narrative requires ignoring all of that. And the media voices perpetuating it are banking on the assumption that most people will not take the time to look at what either player has actually said. Now comes the part of this story that genuinely matters for the franchise's future, the part that the jealousy narrative has been crowding out of the conversation. Caitlin Clark is being undermined on this roster, not by Kelsey Mitchell, not by her backcourt partner who just publicly credited her for transforming women's basketball. She's being undermined by 5 specific roster situations whose performance gaps are forcing Clark to carry weight that a franchise point guard should never carry alone. These 5 problems are more dangerous to Clark's future in Indiana than any social media rumor, and they deserve the same passionate public debate that the jealousy narrative has been generating for weeks. Sydney Carlson was signed to bring experience and leadership. At her presence, a steady voice, reliable minutes when the starters need rest. What she has delivered is 2.5 points, 0.8 rebounds, and 2 assists per game in under 11 minutes of playing time. At 35, her game operates at a pace that actively disrupts the offensive tempo that makes Clark devastating. Clark's offense demands quick ball movement, quick decisions, immediate cuts and releases. Carlson hesitates, late passes, slow reads, open shots left on the table. Every minute she is on the court, the Fever's rhythm loses a beat it cannot afford to lose. Ariel Turner arrived with the profile of a defensive anchor, a former first-round pick known for tenacity and shot-blocking instincts. The 2025 season has revealed something different. A player averaging 0.4 points, 0.9 rebounds, and 0.2 assists across 14 games while shooting just 20% from the field. She should be setting hard screens for Clark, rolling aggressively to the basket, controlling the defensive glass. Instead, she floats through possessions with disengaged body language that communicates disconnection at the exact moment this young team needs its veterans to communicate urgency and investment. Natasha Howard is the most expensive disappointment on the roster. 3-time WNBA champion, former All-Star. Championship pedigree that the organization paid premium dollars to bring to Indiana's young core. What they received instead is a player averaging 11.6 points and 6.8 rebounds while shooting under 41% from the field. The box score looks passable. What it conceals is missed putbacks, deteriorated pick and roll defense that opposing guards attack without hesitation, and body language problems that are as damaging as the statistical ones. Shoulders hunched after mistakes. Hesitant returns to defense, minimal vocal presence during the timeouts when leadership matters most. Howard is absorbing high-salary minutes that could be developing younger players who match Clark's relentless energy at both ends of the floor. Damaris Dantas was brought in to provide floor spacing and rebounding muscle in the paint. She is shooting under 38% from the field and averaging 5 points and 2.4 rebounds per game. The specific problem is timing. Clark's offense runs on split-second decisions. She drives and kicks to the corner, expecting an immediate release. Dantas pauses. That fraction of a second, that moment between receiving the pass and releasing the shot, gives defenses time to recover. It converts what should be simple, high-percentage scoring opportunities into wasted possessions, forcing Clark to generate offense from scratch on a play that should have already produced 2 points. And then there is Kelsey Mitchell. This requires the most careful and honest framing, because this is where the social media narrative has done its most significant damage. There is no evidence that Kelsey Mitchell resents Caitlin Clark. None. Every public statement points in the opposite direction. But there is a genuine basketball tension between Mitchell's natural playing style and the system Clark needs to operate at maximum efficiency that the coaching staff has not yet resolved. Mitchell's professional identity was built as a primary ball handler and offensive creator. She built her entire game around generating her own shots, working through pick-and-roll situations with the ball in her hands, and making isolation plays produce results. She was built to be the engine. Clark's offense runs on a different philosophy entirely. The ball flows through Clark as the initiator and then moves outward to shooters, cutters, and rollers. The rhythm of that offense depends on every player understanding their role as a piece of a moving system rather than as an individual creator waiting for their turn to create. When Mitchell defaults to ball-dominant habits, even with the best intentions, the tempo that makes Clark's offense devastating breaks down. Defenses recognize it immediately and adjust by sagging off Mitchell to collapse on Clark's driving lanes. The spacing closes. The advantage disappears. This is a conflict of basketball philosophies, not a conflict of personalities, not a conflict of egos. And the fact that the internet converted a stylistic coaching problem into a jealousy narrative has made it significantly harder to have the honest, tactical conversation this team actually needs to have. None of this happened randomly. The jealousy narrative was seeded deliberately, and the people doing the seeding have identifiable motivations worth examining. The media voices most aggressively promoting the tension storyline around the Indiana Fever are the same voices who have struggled most visibly with what Caitlin Clark's arrival has meant for the league. One of them went on record admitting to feeling jealous about a 22-year-old rookie's shoe deal. And yet those same voices continue to receive platform space to shape the narrative around the most important cultural moment in women's basketball history. The pattern is consistent and it is not subtle. Clark generates historic viewership numbers. The narrative becomes about whether the other players are receiving enough credit. Clark sells out arenas across the league. The narrative becomes about whether her fan base is too passionate. Clark publicly advocates for Mitchell to win Player of the Month over herself. The narrative becomes about jealousy and tension inside the Fever locker room. Every positive development gets converted into a controversy. Every controversy gets amplified. And the players who are actually inside that building watch their genuine relationships get publicly misrepresented by people whose platforms depend on drama existing rather than being resolved. The institutional investment in this narrative is real. Acknowledging that one player transformed the WNBA in ways the league could not generate on its own for 27 years requires admitting something uncomfortable about those 27 years. It is easier to manufacture complexity, to suggest that the story is more divided and more conflicted than it actually is, than to sit with the simple documented truth. One player arrived and changed everything. And the people who have the hardest time accepting that truth are the loudest voices in the room trying to convince everyone that something is broken inside Indiana. One of the most damaging side effects of the jealousy narrative is that it obscures a statistical legacy that belongs at the center of the contract conversation the Fever front office is about to face. Kelsey Mitchell ranks in the top 10 in league scoring for multiple consecutive seasons. She sits second all-time in franchise history in career points, field goals made, three-pointers made, and free throws. She is third in the most games played in franchise history, fourth all-time in career assists. She stayed when this franchise was irrelevant. She rebuilt her game multiple times when the coaching staff around her changed. She produced elite scoring numbers in seasons when the rest of the roster could not support her adequately. And she chose to return to Indiana over potentially more lucrative options because she believes in what this team is building. I'm very grateful to be one of the ones that put the bricks down. That is her self-assessment, not a demand for more recognition. Not a complaint about being overlooked. A statement of foundational pride from a player who understands exactly what her contribution has been and exactly what it made possible. The front office decision around Mitchell's contract extension is the most consequential roster decision Indiana has in front of them. And making that decision based on social media noise about jealousy rather than on accurate basketball and financial analysis would be among the most costly mistakes this organization could make. Here is what actually happened. Chiney Ogwumike sat in front of a camera and dismissed the Indiana Fever and their fans with 7 condescending words. Kelsey Mitchell heard it, and rather than let it slide, rather than protect herself from the crossfire by staying quiet, she responded, calmly, factually. Publicly, she credited Caitlin Clark directly for creating the wave that transformed this league. She talked about watching Indiana change in real time and the gratitude that comes from having been part of the foundation that made the change possible. She defended her team against the exact narrative that the media ecosystem was hoping she would validate. That is not jealousy breaking through the surface. That is loyalty refusing to be silent. The 5 actual roster problems that are limiting what Caitlin Clark can accomplish in Indiana deserve the passionate, urgent public conversation that the jealousy rumor has been consuming. The coaching staff needs to resolve the stylistic tensions on this roster. The front office needs to make the right call on Mitchell's future with the franchise. And the media ecosystem around the WNBA needs to decide whether it is going to serve the league honestly or continue manufacturing division where none exists. Kelsey Mitchell chose Indiana when she did not have to. She chose to go where she is loved rather than where she is merely tolerated. She chose to defend her teammate when the easy move was to let the narrative roll and collect the attention that ambiguity generates. And Caitlin Clark, the player social media insists is the source of all internal tension, publicly advocated for Mitchell to win an award over herself. That is the real story of what is happening inside the Indiana Fever. Not jealousy, not division, not cracks in the foundation. 2 players who respect each other deeply, surrounded by roster problems that need honest solutions, being covered by a media ecosystem that profits more from inventing conflict than from reporting the truth. The Indiana Fever story is not slowing down. The questions around this roster, the contract decisions, the tactical adjustments, and the ongoing war between accurate reporting and viral narratives are going to keep generating headlines through the rest of this season and into the offseason. If you want coverage that stays rooted in what players actually say rather than what the rumor cycle needs them to have said, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and drop your take in the comments below. Do you believe the jealousy narrative is real, or is it manufactured by voices who need the drama to stay relevant? Because the answer to that question says everything about who you trust to tell this story, and we are here to tell it correctly every single time. Subscribe, turn on notifications. This conversation is just getting started.